Muy buenas tardes a todos. Vamos a darle 5 minutitos más a los compañeros, pues, para que se vayan conectando, para así dar paso a la reunión.
Vic, ¿tú nos oyes?
Sí, les escucho muy bien. Voy a postear en... déjame ver qué dice el número aquí que tienen ustedes.
Ponlo en el chat porque le sale ahí un número que no es a esta nena.
Oh, sí, ok, voy a mirar nuevamente.
Lo que está en el screen está bien.
Pues aparentemente sí, yo lo que voy a mirar lo que dice la reunión misma. Así que déjame mirar aquí a ver qué es lo que nos dice. Dice, ok.
Si no, ponle el número del chat.
Sí, enseguida lo voy a poner. Es simplemente el asterisco es 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 9 y un 6. 1, 2, 3, 6 9 y un 6. Vamos a ver. Voy a poner en el chat el número solo.
En el Federal Register no hay nada más que 5 9.
Ya lo
Pues
tiene.
ese esos 5 9 que están en el Federal Register es el problema. Son 6 9.
Sí, pero ya lo tiene.
Ok, pues déjame ponerlo en el chat para todo el mundo y si gustan puedo intervenir con mi voz en este mismo medio. Sí. Si gustan. Ok, bueno, vamos a hacer eso. Okidoki. Muy bien.
Cristina, puede empezar el recording. Y Nelson, ya puedes empezar.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Bienvenidos a la reunión del DAP. Son las 1:09 de la tarde.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the DAP meeting. It's 1:09 p.m.
Donde vamos a discutir hoy a seguir discutiendo el plan bojador estratégico, el bojador de plan estratégico a 5 años. Antes de comenzar, quisiera darle la bienvenida a un nuevo miembro del panel asesor, Joel González. Él es un pescador de aguada comercial y es presidente de la Asociación de Pescadores Aguadeñas. Es un pescador que lo conozco hace muchos años y ejerce diversos tipos de pesca, entre ellas las redes, NASA, palcos de aguas profundas y entre otras. Bienvenido, Joel. Espero, ¿verdad?, que esto sea de aprendizaje para ti y entiendo que tienes mucho que aportar por tu conocimiento.
Gracias, Nelson. Hay que dejar que Cristina lea para récord las personas que están participando. Y después sigue la reunión con Nelson.
Okay.
Cristina, ¿la puedes leer? Sé que Cristina tiene problemas de audio. Bueno, yo la leo. Miguel Rolón, Cristina Olán, Graciela García Moliner, Michelle Duval, Carlos Velázquez, Cedric Taquín, Diana Martínez, Gary Rogers, Guillermo Cordero, Yajair Rivera, Yajair Rivera, Gary Rogers, Guillermo Cordero, Joel, Julio Ramos, María del Mar, Nelson Crespo, Orián Sadik, Raimundo Espinosa, Sara Stevenson, Vanessa Ramírez y Viv Seda, Wilson Santiago, Yamitza Rodríguez, Elisa dos veces, y Yasmín Vélez.
Alguien que no se mencionó, puede. Aparentemente estamos todos. Vamos a dar comienzo a la reunión. ¿Cómo comenzamos, Miguel? Leyendo el borrador.
No. Déjale el turno a Michelle y ella conduce la reunión.
Ok, pues ahora vamos a darle paso a la doctora Duval para que empiece a compartir el borrador con nosotros. Adelante, doctor Duval.
Michelle, if you're talking, you're muted.
Just one moment. Just one moment, Miguel. I'm just trying to share the appropriate screen.
No problem.
Okay, can you all see my screen right now? And can you all hear me right now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and you can see the screen. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I am going to start my video. Thank you very much, Guillermo, and let me place this into presentation mode to make it easier for everyone. Okay, thank you very much. So, lo siento, no hablo bien español. Así hablaré en inglés, pero la presentación está escrito en español. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance today and for all of your efforts and your input with respect to the development of the strategic plan. This should be your last meeting with respect to development of the strategic plan. And our focus today is on the draft strategies for the island-specific objectives for the strategic plan. So this is just a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. First, I will review the previous actions of the DAP and the council. Then I will give just a brief reminder of the components and organization of the strategic plan. And our goal for today is to review and approve draft strategies for the island-specific objectives. And so previously, at the end of March, the district advisory panels reviewed and approved the draft island-specific objectives for each goal theme and provided some initial review and feedback on potential strategies for each island-specific objective. At the end of April, the council reviewed and selected draft vision, mission, and goal statements, and then the council approved the island-specific objectives that were reviewed by the DAPs. And so I just want to review the components of a strategic plan. First is the vision, which is it's an aspirational statement of how the council would like to see the future of U.S. Caribbean fisheries. Next is the mission. This is really the council's mandate for management under the Magnuson-Stevens Act and is the reason the council exists. And it also includes the general approach that the council will take to achieve its vision. Next are the goals, and these are the big picture areas of focus that describe the ultimate impact of the council's work, and they are necessary to achieve the vision. Then come the objectives, and these are many steps to achieve the goals, and they are specific, they are observable, and they are generally associated with a problem or an issue. And then finally are the strategies, and that is what we will be focusing on today. And so the strategies are really the approaches that the council will take to meet its objectives. And I always like to come back to this example to illustrate the relationship among the different components of a strategic plan. That being, my problem is that I am tired, I'm grumpy, and my pants don't fit. And so my aspirational vision is that I look and feel fabulous. And my goal to achieve that vision is to get healthy. So to meet this goal, I have established 3 observable objectives that are directly linked to my problem: exercise more, eat better, and reduce stress. And then I have a variety of strategies or approaches to meet each of these 3 objectives. And so with respect to the structure of the council's strategic plan and how these components all fit together, the council's draft strategic plan has a single vision, a single mission, and 4 goal statements for the 4 different themes of management, ecosystem and resource health, social, cultural, and economic issues, and communication and outreach. And to better address the unique characteristics and the specific priorities of each of the council's districts, we have different island-specific objectives and associated island-specific strategies for each of those first 3 goals. So each of the goals, with the exception of communication and outreach, has island-specific objectives and island-specific strategies. The communication and outreach goal is important to the entire jurisdiction, and all of the objectives and associated strategies are important to all of the council's districts, so they apply district-wide. Next, I just wanted to quickly review the draft vision, mission, and goal statements that were selected by the council during their meeting in April. And so the draft vision is thriving and resilient island ecosystems, fisheries, and fishing communities that provide cultural, social, and economic benefits for all. So this is the council's aspirational vision for what it wants U.S. Caribbean fisheries to look like. And the draft mission statement is: the Caribbean Fishery Management Council conserves, restores, and manages fishery resources in the U.S. Caribbean consistent with the requirements of the Magnuson-Stevens Act. The council is committed to advancing the collaborative stewardship of these fisheries and supporting island ecosystems through education, outreach, and stakeholder input. So this mission reflects the Council's mandate under the Magnuson-Stevens Act, but it also reflects the Council's general approach to meeting its vision. Next, the draft goal statements. There are 4 of them. The first one is for management, and that is advance management approaches that promote healthy local fisheries and ecosystems, consider the needs of island fishing communities, and foster collaboration among management partners. The draft goal statement for ecosystem and resource health is promote sustainable utilization of local marine resources in a manner that maintains local ecological structure and function and provides for resilient fishery resources. The draft social, cultural, and economic issues goal statement is ensure that management decisions consider the unique characteristics and needs of island fishing communities while promoting fair and equitable resource use. And finally, the communication and outreach draft goal statement is engage, educate, and inform a variety of audiences to improve public understanding and participation in the council process. And so today for this meeting, we will review the previous feedback and edits to the draft strategies for each of the island-specific objectives. And those edits that you provided at our meeting in March are underlined. And then you will provide any additional suggestions and edits to the draft strategies. And hopefully that will be by consensus, and those will be incorporated into a draft of the complete strategic plan that the council will review and approve for further public input at a meeting in July. And before we review your previous input, I just want to remind everyone that all of the draft island-specific objectives and the draft strategies came from the feedback that you all provided during our strategic planning meetings last summer, late last August, where you all provided your top 5 priorities for each of the 3 of the 4 different goal themes. You all also provided feedback on the focus areas for the communication and outreach goal as well. These draft objectives and strategies also reflect the goals and objectives that are included in the island-based fishery management plans. They also incorporate feedback that was received through an online comment form with respect to the different issues under each of those goal themes as well. So I just want to make sure everyone understands where the sources of information that were used and the development of these. And so what I would like to do is I'll go through and review the island-specific objectives and associated strategies for the first goal. Then we'll pause and take any suggestions or feedback that people have, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide and the next goal. So the first is the management goal statement, and I've already read that, so I will not read it again. It is there on your screen for you to review. And the the Puerto Rico draft management strategies are associated with the first 2 of the island-specific objectives. So the first island-specific objective is support the development of accurate, timely, and cost-effective data collection, reporting, and monitoring programs. And so when we met in March, you all provided one additional strategy that you wanted to see added, and that's at the bottom and underlined. But starting at the top, those draft strategies are improving fishery independent data through partnerships, prioritize data collection for species subject to seasonal and area closures, expand education and outreach on commercial e-reporting technology, continue participation in reinitiation of MRIP, the Marine Recreational Information Program in Puerto Rico, support the Southeast Fisheries Science Center and DRNA improvements to commercial sampling, support Southeast Fisheries Science Center Fishery Independent Deepwater Snapper Grouper Survey. And the one that you added during your March meeting was support local government efforts to increase port sampling and port agents. And the second island-specific objective is promote fisher involvement and other collaborative research approaches to meeting island-specific science and information needs. And the potential strategies here are develop and prioritize a list of Puerto Rico-specific research needs, work with science and research partners to prioritize stock assessments for species subject to seasonal and area closures, collaborate with Sea Grant to ensure Puerto Rico-specific research needs are included in grant opportunities, incorporate fisher observations into stock assessments, and develop a list of Puerto Rico science and data needs that could be addressed using commercial and recreational fisher involvement. And so, Mr. Chairman, I am actually going to pause and see if anyone has any additions or suggestions that they would like to provide in addition to what everyone sees on the screen.
Hasta ahora, ¿alguien tiene alguna sugerencia? No, parece que no. Yo entiendo que en cuanto a cuando dice trabajar junto a socios en la ciencia y el manejo para priorizar los avalúos de abasto para especies que están sujetas a vedas de temporadas o por área, además de socios, debemos incluir pescadores. También incluyan a los pescadores, aunque lo dice arriba en el tópico, yo creo que sería bueno añadirlo ahí.
Okay, Nelson, it seems like you broke up just a little bit. I am going to try to, let's see if I can. Want to try to address your comment here. So it looks like you were saying that you wanted to add something to this second bullet with respect to the data collection for species subject to seasonal and area closures. Is that correct?
I mean, Michelle, if I may, what he's saying is that the second set of sentences, he says trabajar junto a socios, and he would like to add socios and pescadores, fishers.
That's correct, Miguel.
So just to add and pescadores.
Eso es correcto. Solo añadir pescadores. Okay.
Am I in the right place, and is that the right word?
Es lo correcto. Y es la palabra correcta.
It's the second set of lines, the second paragraph. You said
So down here?
Yes.
It's on the second line. Topic, yeah.
The second line. Trabajar junto a socios and pescadores. Y pescadores.
Oh, okay. Y let's see. Trabajo junto a socios en ciencia y is that correct?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Also, Julio Ramos have asked a question on the chat. Can you translate it for me, Miguel?
He doesn't have a question. What he has is a statement, and he can say it on the record. But what he's saying in social terms, economic and cultural, we need to send a message that the community, that they are a strong force, labor force, workforce, and they would like, he would like for the people to understand that they are not enemies of the ecology. Their priority is to provide food, seafood, to the communities. Julio, you can say it in Spanish and then it will be translated if you wish. ¿Estás ahí, Julio?
Ok, ¿me escucha, Miguel?
Sí, Julio.
Ajá, sí, soy yo.
Dilo en tus propias palabras, lo que escribiste
Sí,
ahí,
buenas
porque
tardes.
es bien importante.
Sí, muy buenas tardes para todos. Es que pensando en los términos sociales, económicos, culturales, tenemos que dar como un tipo de enfoque que llegue más a la comunidad, a las comunidades, ¿verdad? Porque, por ejemplo, podemos visitar Panamá en el área que se llama la cinta costera. Ahí está el desembarco de los pescadores y hay que ver con el respeto, con la deferencia que se trata a esta fuerza obrera. Sin embargo, aquí, sabes que ha explotado como este boom de que todo es ecológico, que todo es en defensa, que todo es pro. Nosotros somos una fuerza responsable. Sabemos que estamos regulados por diferentes vedas, por diferentes tamaños de cada pesca. Y eso es algo que la gente no entiende. Y mucho más los pescadores de redes. Los pescadores de redes son como los más atacados. Si hay algún tipo de, en las páginas de las redes sociales, hay que ver las cosas que hablan de los pescadores que usan las redes. Y prácticamente todo lo que conocemos de la pesca nació de ahí, partió desde las redes en adelante. Primero sabemos que fue el anzuelo del huesito que usaban de los diferentes animales. Después a alguien se le ocurrió la maravillosa idea esta de hacer la malla, de hacer la red. Y hay que llevar el mensaje, este mensaje de que nosotros somos, tras que somos una fuerza laboral de primer orden, de prioridad, porque servimos el alimento, lo hacemos con responsabilidad, lo hacemos tomando en cuenta el valor de cada especie, las capturas de cada especie y llevar este mensaje. O sea, el mensaje es de que no estamos contribuyendo a la comunidad, estamos contribuyendo a la economía y sobre todas las cosas estamos protegiendo el recurso. Por ejemplo, en el ejemplo de las redes están reguladas por ciertos tamaños. Igual que la NASA, sabemos que la NASA pues tiene que ser 2 pulgadas por 2 pulgadas. Y eso pues muchas personas es lo que no entienden. Las regulaciones que tenemos nosotros. Y en vez de vernos como una fuerza laboral, en vez de vernos como amigos del recurso, muchas ocasiones lo que hacen es que nos ven como si fuéramos los destructores y los causantes de todos los problemas que están sucediendo en los ecosistemas marinos. Que todos nosotros sabemos que viene de mucho más arriba, ¿verdad? Desde los químicos, etcétera, la erosión, todo lo que está sucediendo. Pero hay una gran comunidad, hay una gran masa de personas que no lo ven de esta manera. Y tenemos que llevar el mensaje, este tipo de mensaje, a ver cómo podríamos engranar el mensaje de nuestro trabajo que hacemos responsablemente versus esta idea que no es afín ni comparte, ¿verdad? Nuestra manera de desarrollar nuestra labor.
Estos son buenos puntos, pero vamos entonces a pedirle a la doctora Michelle Duval que nos diga dónde se podía incorporar.
Ok, perfecto. Muchas gracias, Miguel.
No, gracias a ti. Michelle, so if you capture what Julio was saying, then the question is where it would be most appropriate to incorporate those points.
Thank you very much, Miguel. So I think it might be most appropriate to revisit that contribution when we get to the goal area that is focused on social, cultural, and economic issues. It seems like that might be an appropriate place to add a strategy that would focus on the responsibility and the contributions of fishers to the economy and to the environment and to the stewardship of the resources. Does that sound okay with you, Miguel, as well as Mr. Chairman?
I believe that captures Julio's point.
Okay, when we get to that section, remind me, and we will find the appropriate place to add that, if that's okay. I also wanted to note that Yamitsa indicated in the chat that not everyone might know what MRIP stands for, which is Marine Recreational Information Program. And I apologize that there are acronyms in these slides. That was really just for the sake of trying to fit everything onto the slide. So these will all be spelled out within the strategic plan, and there will be a list of acronyms so that people understand what that is. So my apologies, and thank you very much, Yamitsa, for pointing that out. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I will go ahead and move on to the next slide, which contains the next two island-specific objectives and the draft strategies for those. Okay, I don't see anyone with a hand up or anything, so I will go ahead and move on. So this is the next two strategies, island-specific objectives, and associated draft strategies. So the first is ensure that management measures encourage regulatory compliance and foster effective enforcement. And so there are 4 strategies draft strategies under this objective, and you all provided some input on that during your last meeting in March. But they are review effectiveness of existing Puerto Rico measures, work with Puerto Rico Department of Natural Environmental Resources to foster regulatory consistency, work with Recursos Naturales and NOAA Office of Law Enforcement, U.S. Coast Guard, and local marine enforcement agencies to support cross-training of personnel. And so this was something that you all added last time, the U.S. Coast Guard and local enforcement agencies. And then the last is collaborate with management partners to develop commercial and recreational compliance guides for Puerto Rico. The next objective is collaborate with domestic and international partners to promote adaptive and efficient management that considers diverse community interests. And the draft strategies here were regularly review effectiveness of existing management measures, such as spawning areas and closures, work with partners to develop clearly stated objectives for management actions, address impacts of bycatch on ecosystem relationships, and participate in the Western and Central Atlantic Fisheries Commission Queen Conch work group. And the final one was evaluate new and existing management measures for consistency with local ecosystem productivity using ecosystem status reports. And so I will just pause there to see if anyone has any recommendations or suggestions for any additional strategies or edits.
¿Hay alguien que quiera añadir alguna sugerencia o tenga alguna pregunta?
Está completo, estaba prácticamente bastante completo.
Thank you. It is all your input that has led to this.
Tengo una pregunta, Carlos Velázquez.
Adelante, Carlos.
Saludos y buenas tardes a todos los compañeros. Carlos Velázquez, Corporación de Pescadores Unidos, Nahuabo. Nada, tengo una duda, a ver si me pueden aclarar. Cuando dicen esto de colaboración con socios nacionales e internacionales para promover un manejo adaptivo y eficiente que considere diversos intereses de las comunidades, adicional a revisar regularmente las medidas, trabajar con socios, pero cuando yo digo trabajar, o sea, quiero que me expliquen, trabajar con estos socios que puedan venir de nacionales e internacionales, que no conocen las pesquerías de Puerto Rico, ¿cómo podemos envolverlos aquí? Porque gente que bregue posiblemente con salmón en Alaska, que vengan a colaborar con un sistema de acá de langosta espinosa, ¿cómo podemos entonces envolverlos con ellos? O sea, ¿cómo podemos hacer este andamiaje para que ellos preparen? Tengo esa duda, ¿cómo podemos preparar esto? Porque mejor con los colaboradores que tenemos
Carlos, aquí
en
no
la
viene
nación.
Carlos, aquí no viene nadie del salmón a decirlo de seco la langosta. Lo que se está diciendo aquí es al revés. Es tomar en consideración los comentarios y recomendaciones de los paneles, los 3 paneles, en cualquier actividad donde el Consejo se envuelva con Estados Unidos a nivel internacional. Por ejemplo, si nosotros tenemos aquí una medida para proteger la langosta o el carrucho, ver que los otros países adopten medidas similares si estas están respaldadas por ciencia, la mejor ciencia posible. Esa es la idea que está esto. No es que ellos vengan aquí a tomar, a hacer estudios sin saberle y decirnos a nosotros qué hacer sin ellos saber nada de esto. Ahí tú tienes mucha razón, o sea, es al revés.
Perfecto, gracias Miguel por tu contestación, muy amable.
Thank you, Miguel. Much appreciated for clarifying that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move on to the next goal area, which is ecosystem and resource health. Again, this is the draft goal statement that the council selected. I am not going to read that again. You can read it easily for yourselves on the screen. But these are the first 2 island-specific objectives and associated draft strategies. So the first is implement the fishery ecosystem plan as a roadmap for future council actions to maintain the ecological relationships, roles, and services of Puerto Rico's island ecosystem. And the potential strategies that you all reviewed at your March meeting and had some suggested additions to were evaluate existing spawning season closures and closed areas such as Bajo de Sico, Tourmaline Bank, Abrir la Sierra to determine contributions to ecosystem integrity. The one that was added is establish a schedule to regularly evaluate and monitor closed seasons and areas. Collaborate with science partners and stakeholders to improve local ecosystem information. Establish a process to incorporate ecosystem information and approaches into management measures specific to Puerto Rico. And identify enforcement concerns that may impact ecological relationships. The second island-specific objective was identify, manage, and protect coral reef and other fishery resource habitats of Puerto Rico. And the draft strategies are develop council habitat policies that address impacts to essential fish habitat from coastal development, erosion and sedimentation, and other forms of pollution. Develop outreach materials on impacts of habitat loss from non-fishing impacts, and in parentheses, erosion and sedimentation, and communicate and collaborate with agencies responsible for managing these activities. So this was something that you all added during your meeting in March. Next is support Southeast Fisheries Science Center mapping efforts and collaborate with science partners to identify Puerto Rico habitat mapping needs. Work with management partners to establish clear goals for 5-year essential fish habitat reviews. Ensure that essential fish habitat designations account for ecological roles and relationships of species. and support projects that rehabilitate fishery habitats to offset habitat loss or damage. So, Mr. Chairman, I will pause again to see if there are any comments or questions from anyone.
¿Algún comentario que tenga alguno de los miembros del panel? On the first topic, I understand that maybe we have to include something that evaluate the fishing year that really affect the ecosystem. For example, I have been saying that for a long time because I know for what I'm talking about. It's regarding the trawler nets. Everybody knows that the trawler nets is a good gear that if you use correctly, you know, you can make good catch, make good money, but in the most of the cases, nobody uses it that the way it's supposed to be. And what's going on? And you know, killing many species, and I says turtles, and you know, a lot of fish that when you pick it up, the trawler net, you know, is the quality is bad, you know, it's totally bad. And we had, you know, to work with the scientific committee because I make this claim to the local government and nobody pay attention to me. And I think that it's time to step up on the plate and, you know, move forward and try to evaluate those years that really affect. And this is one example only. Maybe we can evaluate other years. I'm a fisherman, you know, and I want to catch a lot of fish, but I want to protect the habitat from where I make my living, you know. So we have to move forward and do something. This is a serious problem that we have to attend.
Thank you, Nelson. Would it be, I'm thinking that perhaps down here, we would add a strategy to, I think you said maybe work with the SSC, or perhaps it would say address the impacts of fishing gear on fishery resources, or address the negative impacts of fishing gear on fishery resources, something like that. I will have to ask Miguel to help me out with the Spanish.
Sería colaborar con los científicos y pescadores para examinar el impacto de ciertas artes de pesca en el hábitat asociado a las pesquerías. So don't worry, you can put it later, but you can write it in English and then we can do it.
So perhaps
we need to have fishers, I mean scientists and fishers collaborating to assess the impact of certain gear on the habitat associated to fisheries.
about on fishery habitats.
Yes.
Okay, and then I will work with you and Christina to make sure that that is properly translated into Spanish.
Okay, Christina can help us with that.
Great, thank you, Nelson. Any other comments or additions or questions?
¿Alguien más que quiera aportar otro comentario?
Sí, bueno, eso es Joel.
Adelante.
En cuanto a, creo que pues te estás refiriendo más a los trasmayos como tal, en la exposición pues que se estuvo pues dando ahora. ¿Estoy en lo cierto?
Me estoy refiriendo directamente a los mallorquines.
A los mallorquines, ok. Sí, porque en cuanto pues a las redes pues, de chinchorros se habían hecho ya unos estudios acerca de cómo impactaba los diferentes fondos marinos. Pero sí, estoy bien consciente de lo que tú estás hablando, del impacto pues, que está llevando ahora mismo y la muerte de muchas especies. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ti, Joel. ¿Alguien más que interese dar otro comentario? Looks nobody. Everybody's okay. You can continue, Dr. Duval. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. So the next two objectives and draft strategies are on the screen here. So the first is collaborate with management partners to address the impacts of natural disasters on ecosystem structure and function. And the draft strategies were determine data needed to evaluate impacts of natural disasters on species and habitats, incorporate effects of natural disasters into the development of ecosystem status reports, evaluate the flexibility of existing management approaches to respond to local ecosystem impacts from hurricanes and earthquakes, and establish a process to collect fishermen observations on local impacts of natural disasters. The next objective is collaborate with management partners to address enforcement concerns that may affect ecological relationships. So enforcement was a very important topic that you all discussed. And the potential strategies here are conduct outreach with NOAA Office of Law Enforcement and Department of Recursos Naturales Ambientales, enforcement personnel regarding impacts of illegal fishing activities on fishery resources and habitats, conduct outreach to Puerto Rico agencies on impacts of non-fishing impacts and development on ecosystem structure and function. And then you all added one during your meeting in March, which is conduct outreach with the fishing community to communicate the impacts of illegal fishing on the health of the resource. And so, Mr. Chairman, I turn it over to you to see if there are any additional suggestions or comments on those draft strategies.
¿Alguien que quiera añadir, aportar en estos dos temas? Looks, everybody's okay with that? Let's continue.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the next area is social, cultural, and economic issues. And this, again, on the screen is the draft goal statement that was selected by the council. And so, again, I think this is the goal within which we can add something to address, I believe it was it Julio who spoke earlier about the contributions of fishermen and their stewardship with respect to the resource and educating other stakeholders and the public about the stewardship efforts of the fishers. So the first two objectives under this goal are shown on the screen. So the first island-specific objective is promote the collection of social and economic data that informs management decisions. And the draft strategies here are engage science partners, fishers, consumers, wholesalers, and distributors, and the SSC, the Scientific and Statistical Committee, to identify and prioritize social and economic data gaps and research priorities for Puerto Rico. So this was what you all added last time, was the fishers, consumers, wholesalers, and distributors to this, this strategy. The next was work with Sea Grant to ensure social and economic research priorities are incorporated into funding opportunities. And the last was use results from existing and completed studies, for example, the Hurricane Maria and COVID-19 assessments. And there was a MARFIN project that MARFIN stands for, oh goodness, it is escaping me. I think marine resources. I might have to ask Sarah or Kevin McCarthy to help me out with that one. But it's a cooperative research program to inform future decisions. And Yumitsa said information network. Thank you very much. So those were the draft strategies for that first objective. The next objective was to evaluate the social, cultural, and economic impacts of management decisions and actions across user groups. And the draft strategies here were to review and document the social and economic impacts of existing Puerto Rico closed seasons and spawning areas on commercial for hire and recreational stakeholders. Ensure that management measures address cultural differences across Puerto Rico's fishing communities, utilize online tools and social media to incorporate fisher and other stakeholder observations and experiences, and assess recreational fishing opportunity and satisfaction across Puerto Rico communities. So I think first I'll just ask if there are any additional suggestions or edits to any of these draft strategies or any questions. And then we do have one additional slide with a couple of other objectives and associated strategies. And somewhere in here, let's find the place to address the comments that Julio made earlier. Thank you.
¿Alguien quiere aportar algo adicional en estos dos tópicos? Looks no.
That's all.
Can evaluate where to put Julio's comments.
I'm thinking, Mr. Chairman, that on the next slide, under one of those objectives, I think probably the next objective might be a good place to address Julio's comments. If that's okay, unless Miguel has a thought on perhaps addressing it under one of these.
Actually, in either place will be nice, because this is what he was talking about.
So are you thinking perhaps under the second one, Miguel, that evaluate the social, cultural, and economic impacts of management decisions and actions across user groups, perhaps in here?
Yes. And he also said something like, to let the people know that the fishers are collaborating in the conservation of marine ecosystems rather than being the enemy of the marine ecosystem. I don't know how to paraphrase that in here, but we can say that to take in consideration, let me talk it aloud, to take in consideration the contribution of fishers for the betterment of the ecosystem surrounding Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And that's more or less what he wanted to say. So, sería que se considere la contribución de los pescadores en el buen manejo del ecosistema asociado a pesquerías en el Caribe americano. Anyway, we can put
Okay.
it in English, and then Cristina can help us with the translation.
See, un momento. So something maybe like this, consider the contributions of fishers with respect to stewardship of the resource in the development and evaluation of management decisions. Is that sort
Yes.
of?
After resource, we should include stewardship in the resource and ecosystem. In developing an evaluation of management decisions. I believe that in a nutshell, that's what he wanted to convey. And it is something that the council should never forget.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Miguel, and to Julio, we will make sure that what you have said is accurately reflected in Spanish. Again, I'm sorry that I do not speak Spanish very well, so I rely on Miguel and Cristina to help me out with this.
Don't worry, Julio said thanks, so
Okay.
I guess I will capture what he said.
Thank you, Julio. Any other thoughts on this particular slide? If not, I will move on to the next one, which has 2 additional objectives under this goal theme. Okay, I'm not hearing anybody, and I don't think I see any hands raised. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to these next 2 island-specific objectives under this goal theme. The first is promote efforts that support social and economic opportunity and stability across sectors and fishing communities. And we had a few draft strategies here, one of which you had some modification to. So the first draft strategy was support community efforts to improve fishing infrastructure across Puerto Rico. The next was support and promote. So that was what you added, and promote the development of a recruitment program for young fishers that encourages legal entry into the fishery. And the last was consider management approaches that address recreational fishing opportunity and satisfaction. And then the second objective here is consider the impacts of enforcement and illegal fishing in Puerto Rico on economic opportunity and social well-being. And the 2 draft strategies here were collaborate with science partners to document the economic impact of illegal and unlicensed sales of fish in Puerto Rico, and work with management partners to determine where additional enforcement could improve economic conditions and or trust among user groups. And so I will just pause to see if there are any questions or additional suggestions or edits. I'm getting a thumbs up from Yanita.
¿Alguien tiene algún comentario en esto?
Sí, bueno. Creo, mi nombre es Joel. Es que está poniendo el nombre más. Donde dice apoyar, yo creo que debe decir apoyar y apoyar Dios mío, dice apoyar estudios o pues o un programa apoyar un programa de estudio y promover el desarrollo de un programa de reclutamiento para pescadores jóvenes que fomenten la entrada ilegal a la pescadería. A la pesquería.
Joel, pero ¿a qué tú te refieres con estudio? ¿Qué estudio?
A lo que me refiero a un programa de estudio, me refiero como pues se está hablando pues de desarrollar un programa de reclutamiento. A la misma vez pues yo creo que se debe de capacitar a los pescadores, pues a los jóvenes nuevos pues que quieran entrar en la pesca, apoyarlos para que conozcan de los artes de la pesca y puedan entonces entrar. Yo creo que sería bueno que nosotros como pescadores pudiéramos entrar en cuanto, o el consejo como tal, pudiera entrar en cuanto a lo que es la educación, que el mismo gobierno promueva un programa de educación.
No, pues mira, yo creo que siguiendo tu línea podríamos decir, Michelle, apoyar y promover el desarrollo de un programa de reglamentamiento y capacitación.
Exacto.
Para pescadores jóvenes. Joel, ¿cuál es tu nombre completo? ¿Qué tenemos dos Joel?
Joel González.
Joel González, gracias. ¿Y de dónde eres?
De Aguada.
Gracias, Joel.
La asociación
es que tengo a Diana volviéndose loca apuntando los nombres. Michelle, what Joel is saying is training or capacitación en español, but training will do it.
Okay, and
in Spanish will be capacitación. Oh, yeah, exactly. So in English we'll do the training.
Great. Okay, let me just make a note of that really quickly to make sure I've got all of it. Recruitment and training. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, any other suggestions or contributions? Okay, then I am going to move on. So the last goal area is communication and outreach. So again, this is the draft goal statement that was selected by the council during their April meeting. And I will also, again, emphasize that this is a goal that is important across all of the council's districts. And so there are no island-specific objectives or island-specific strategies associated with these different draft objectives and the draft strategies. I also want to let everyone know that the Outreach and Education Advisory Panel is also going to be reviewing these draft objectives and draft strategies and providing their comments and feedback on that as well. So the first draft objective pertains to tools, communication tools, and it reads, use a variety of communication tools that consider the social, cultural, and economic characteristics of target audiences in coordination with the Outreach and Education Advisory Panel. So in coordination with the OEAP was something that was added by, I think, the St. Thomas, St. John District Advisory Panel, and everyone thought that was a good addition. So the draft strategies are continue use of the council's social media platforms and explore online and app-based technologies. For example, WhatsApp and email templates to convey information and updates. Develop a catalog of communities, markets, businesses, and individuals with preferences and need for traditional media tools. So traditional media tools meaning things like, paper announcements of, say, regulatory changes or something like that. Maintain the content and organization of the council's website to enhance its utility to a variety of users. Ensure that communication and outreach materials account for stakeholder language preferences. Coordinate with management partners, commercial and recreational fishing organizations, non-governmental organizations, and coastal businesses to expand the scope of council communications across new and existing audiences. And consider sector-specific and boat-friendly communication materials. So I'll see if anyone has any questions or any additions to these draft strategies. Thank you. I'm not hearing anybody, and I don't see anything in the chat. So I will go ahead and move on to the next objective. And that is promote participation of a variety of stakeholders in the council process. And there are several draft strategies here. The first is increase the frequency of council communications in advance of meetings or events. Use a variety of traditional online and social media tools to advertise and remind stakeholders of council meetings and events. Expand the use of webinars and conference lines to provide opportunities for remote access, participation, and education. Ensure that meetings and events are scheduled to encourage maximum participation. Consider development of issue-specific online comment forms to expand opportunities for public input. Conduct issue-specific workshops to promote collaborative development of management approaches. Develop a newsletter or summary to highlight council meeting outcomes and anticipated actions. And the council actually has something that it's done like that on its website already. And then this last one was added, and that is expand and improve participation by new and young fishers in the council process. So again, I'll just see if anyone has any additions or suggested edits to any of these draft strategies.
¿Algún comentario que quieran aportar? Yo quiero decir algo. Yo entiendo regarding the new blood. I think we really need new blood, and especially on all the panels that concern to the Caribbean Council and especially for us, since making these meetings by web. I don't see people open to attend those meetings, and we have that never attend. Maybe excuse it or not excuse it, But I think that maybe we can contact them and ask them if they are open, to keep or interested to keep attending this meeting. If not, give the opportunity to new blood, because new blood means new ideas, and maybe gonna help us, to keep improving, on the road.
So Nelson, it's not just expanding participation by young fishers in the council process, but also other stakeholders in the council process, and to maybe ensure that advisory panel members are really committed to attending and providing input. Is that kind of what you're thinking about, or even just new general public participation in the council process?
Yes, I mean external and and internal participation. We need more participation from the interested parties.
Por partes interesadas.
Let's see if there's something I can add here. Perhaps it's not just new and young fishers. It would be
Well, I mean new blood, I mean new people interested to participate. People that want to be engaged and want, to contribute to, what we are doing here.
So perhaps just another bullet, Nelson, to improve and expand participation, by new people or new stakeholders in the council process.
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah, looks good.
You're right. Nelson is presenting 2 points. One is to attract new fishers. For example, new fishers that can come and work in the EP panels. The other one is to engage other people from the public in general in the decision-making process, to help the decision-making process.
So attract new stakeholders into the council process to
improve the decision-making. For the benefits of the fishery resources. Nelson, do these two statements capture what you're trying to say, or not trying to say, but what you're suggesting?
Yeah, more or less okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, Nelson, I mean, if there's anything we can do to make this statement more accurate, Nelson, please don't hesitate to say anything. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can, maybe put, because right now on the DAP, we have some rules that if you don't participate on 2 meetings, you're out. So, I mean, maybe to reevaluate the rules, maybe ask them and, and tell them really clear, if you are not open to attend, we're going to need your space to give it to the opportunity to somebody else.
That's all. But we don't need the strategic plan to address that. What we have right now, we can do it. You and I can sit down after communication. We can draft a communication to the DAP members of Puerto Rico and ask them just that. And once we have their responses, we can tally up who is interested and who's not. But that's something that we can do right now. But in the strategic plan, what we wanted to know if the two statements added by Dr. Duval at this time encompass what you were suggesting, aside from that point that we are going to deal with soon.
So this point right here, this was already added. That was added last time. So this DAP actually added this during the March meeting. So it's just this last one about, trying to attract new stakeholders into the process. And maybe it's, I understand what Nelson's trying to say, and I want to make sure that I write it in a way so that it isn't just exactly the objective, which is promote participation of a variety of stakeholders in the council process. So if we want to attract new stakeholders, perhaps by reaching out to, I think when we say new, maybe it's non-traditional stakeholders. So even folks who perhaps run grocery stores or have, family farms or something like that, to, expand the types of stakeholders who participate. It sounded to me that's kind of like what Nelson was referring to.
Then can we say attract other stakeholders in addition to features into the council process?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of new, just to say other, attract, no, the beginning. Aha.
Okay.
So does that make sense to you for your suggestion?
Yeah, it looks good to me, Miguel. Thank you. Regarding the letter, yeah, we can talk about it. Thank you, Miguel.
Sure.
Okay.
En cuanto a la carta,
Did somebody else have something? I just wanted to make sure that I captured it. I thought I heard my name. Okay, if not, I will, I'll go on to this is the third objective under the communication and outreach strategy. So the communication and outreach goal, which is improve public and stakeholder understanding and awareness of fisheries management, current issues, and the council process. And I think this is also a place where some of the comments that Julio made earlier, there might be a place for that in here as well. So the draft strategies are expand existing non-traditional stakeholder outreach efforts, restaurants, small-scale grocery store owners, and farmers. So we might have just also added something in the previous objective. It looks like we have this covered here. So we just want to make sure we don't repeat things. The The next is continue support of the Marine Resource Education Program, MREP, throughout the US Caribbean. The next is develop island-specific outreach approaches and materials for recreational and commercial fishers. So this was one that was modified last time. Next is expand the role of fisheries liaisons to improve both fisher and public understanding of fisheries issues and the council process. Coordinate with management and science partners to improve the clarity and simplicity of presentations, to improve public understanding. Partner with other outreach organizations, for example, PEPCO, Sea Grant, and federal agencies such as the US Coast Guard, National Park Service, et cetera, and communicate and commercial and recreational fishing, diving, and boating organizations to develop and distribute educational materials to fishers, other marine resource users, for example, divers, and the general public. So this was expanded last time to include commercial and recreational fishing organizations, diving organizations, boating organizations here. And then the last two draft strategies are conduct in-person outreach and workshops to improve fisher and public engagement in the council process, and explore partnerships with organizations to capture traditional ecological knowledge of US Caribbean fishing communities. So I will just note that this first strategy here of expand existing non-traditional stakeholder outreach efforts, is similar to the one that we just added, although the one that we added in the previous objective was focused more on getting those folks actually involved in the council process. So I'll just see if there are any additional suggestions or questions about any of these.
¿Algún comentario que quieran aportar en este tema?
Everybody agrees.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Julio Ramos has something in the chat. La mayoría permanece en silencio. Una aportación por sencilla que se puede ver es una aportación y puede dar valiosa información para el panel.
Ahora sabe que mucho sufre Nelson.
Okay, well, so since it seems like there are no additional suggestions or questions, I just want to review the next steps, which are that the council, all of your contributions and the other district advisory panels will be incorporated. Oh, I'm sorry, Nelson. Nelson, was there something else? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Okay.
No, I'm okay. I lost connection, sorry.
No, disculpe, fue que perdí la conexión, por favor.
go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, so the next steps, all of the input and feedback from you all, as well as the other district advisory panels, will be incorporated into a full draft of the strategic plan, and that will be presented to the council on July 21st. Then we will have some public input on the draft plan. Any suggestions, we'll use an online comment form that will be posted on the council's website. Then any comments or suggestions that the council receives will be collated and presented to the council for final review and approval of the plan. And then I'll be working with Miguel and Graciela to develop an implementation plan for 2022. And so the implementation plan is really about the specific activities that the council is going to be engaged in over the upcoming year that align directly with the objectives and strategies that you all have reviewed and edited today. So we want to make sure that people understand how the council is using the strategic plan, and the implementation plan is a way to do that. So that was all I had. So it is back to Miguel and to Nelson. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That's been a real good presentation and a lot of work. We want to thank Dr. Michelle Duval for all the work during the past several months. And the next step for the 5-year strategic plan is to be presented, as she mentioned, at the council meetings. And then we are hoping that the council will approve the strategic plan in December. So we will be implementing this plan in 2022 all the way to 2024. Once the plan is implemented, that's when the work starts, because we are going to have a committee that is going to meet in December and in the summer. In December, to prioritize and present to the council the different activities that we are going to make in the following year. That is to identify the work plan with the budget attached to it. And then in the summer, we check where are we in terms of the progress made for, in each one of the activities that we set to do in December. And then we meet again in December to assess the previous year and then plan for the next and following year. That will be a committee composed of council members, the 3 chairs of the DAP, the chair of the SSC, and the chair of the OAP. If there's no other questions, we just finished this part of the meeting. I believe that we have, so in other business, Nelson and I had to meet with Graciela to go over the items for discussion that we are going to have at the July and the August meeting regarding the use of the water gear for buoys and the lines that they're using for snapper grouper fisheries. That will take place sometime next week probably. And Nelson, just to ask you if you have seen or hear any comment from your group, and then we can discuss it at that phone call. At this time, do we have anything else from the group that you would like to consider in other business? Anybody? Well, I believe that by silence, we understand that we finished.
Bueno, aparentemente que por el silencio.
Yeah, silence says a lot of things in this committee.
Sí,
Okay,
aparentemente
Nelson, puedes
estamos bien.
cerrar Nelson puede cerrar la reunión entonces.
Pues muchas gracias a todos por su participación y su contribución. ¿Verdad? Thank you, Dr. Duval, for your excellent presentation and, for all the effort you put on, to make this, go through. And,
Thank you, Nelson. I really appreciate everything that
for the day.
you have done as
Take
well.
care, everyone.
So we adjourn at 2:36, June 15. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.